I would also add the whole concept of we are a team. What was that thing we learned recently? Like, it's us versus the thing that we're arguing about or trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy, especially in an argument, some sort of conflict where you just disagree. You turn the other person into your enemy. But especially when you're married, but pretty much in any, healthy, stable relationship, you are a team and it is us against that thing.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to It's All Magic. I am your guide, your host, and your friend, Devin Heyn. And here we'll be discussing how to make your life truly feel like magic. I believe that our very existence on Earth is nothing less than a miracle, and that we all have so much potential to learn, to grow, to experience, and to create during our short time here. It is both my passion and my pleasure to walk this path of life optimization by your side, where we'll discuss topics like passion, purpose, intuition, manifestation, physical well-being, and much, much more. I'm a yoga teacher, a meditation and breathwork facilitator, and a national board certified health and wellness coach. But more importantly, I am an eternal optimist, a lover of life, and a forever student. It is my hope that with each and every episode, you too will finally start to believe it really is all magic after all. Ready to dive in? Let's do it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of It's All Magic. You guys are in for a real treat today because I have none other than the one and only Kalman Epstein Heyn, my husband, my best friend, my soulmate, and my biggest aggravator. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. Nice to be here. That was quite the introduction.
Yep.
Didn't know I was your biggest aggravator.
Now you do.
But thanks for letting me be on your podcast and be your first guest.
Yes, I've been super excited. So let's start off with just a simple question, and then I know you have a segment to get us really into it. The simple question, Cal, how are you doing right now? How are you feeling in this exact moment?
I'm feeling all sorts of ways, mostly high energy. I'm feeling a little nervous. I've never been on a podcast before. It feels kind of like being interviewed at a job where all eyes are on me. And I want to make sure I don't misspeak or anything like that.
Except that your interviewer is your wife.
I'm still nervous. That might be the worst part, actually.
I love it. Okay, so just to get us on the same page, as you said, you have a little segment in mind for us. What is it?
Yeah, okay. So I listen to a podcast. It's two comedians who do a advice podcast every week, and they always do something. They do some sort of improv game before every episode. Okay. I didn't know they do this, but once they released it on Instagram, and I thought it was a good idea for us because they do it to make sure they're on the same page. And I totally believe that people have to be on the same wavelength in order to get each other's jokes and just keep going back and forth well. So this game is pretty simple.
Okay.
I am going to count to 3. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. And then both of us are going to say a number. Let's start 1 through 10.
Okay.
And I'm going to keep repeating 1, 2, 3, and we'll say a number. So like 1, 2, 3, 1. And we'll keep doing that, saying whatever number you want between 1 through 10.
Okay.
Until we hit the same number.
Okay.
And we're gonna try that once just to see how it goes. And then from there, maybe we'll stop or maybe we'll try a bigger number.
So it's a mind reading game.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Same wavelength.
Okay. Ready? So you're going to count down?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So 1 through 10.
Okay.
Any number. 1, 2, 3,
4.
3. And actually, I'm not even going to look at you because that
Okay.
might
look in opposite directions.
Yeah, okay. I'm not even going to look at the camera. Okay. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3,
7.
6. 1, 2, 3, 7.
5.
1, 2, 3, 6.
10.
1, 2, 3,
3.
3. Nice. There we go.
I'm shocked.
I know.
Was that good?
I think that was pretty good. I'm satisfied with that.
Okay.
Let's do a couple more.
Okay.
Let's try 1 through 10 one more time. See if we can get that quickly.
Okay.
And if we are really bad at it, we'll stop.
and then we go to 1 through 100.
We could, but that could be an entire hour. Okay, ready?
Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 1.
4.
1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 7.
3.
1, 2, 3,
7.
10. 1, 2, 3, 3.
10.
1, 2, 3, 4.
2.
1, 2, 3,
6.
3. 1, 2, 3, 5.
7.
Oh my God.
We're totally on the same
Yeah.
wavelength.
Okay. Let's try to get it in 3 more, and then we're gonna call it quits because I don't think this is a good podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Let's go.
1, 2, 3, 3.
5.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
Nice. I
Thank
think
God.
I was going up and you were probably going down at that point.
Yeah,
We were
I
gonna
also
meet
started
somewhere.
doing this weird thing where I would hear what you said and then I would just say that for the next one, clearly knowing you would not repeat the same number.
Yeah. Okay.
That was good.
That was good.
I have another potential quick improv game in
Okay.
mind. You can veto it immediately. Okay, so I'll tell you what it is. And if you hate it, we can skip it. So the game is essentially good thing, bad thing. Okay. So we come up with a scenario. Okay. Oh, you know what this is. We come up with the scenario. One of us represents the good thing. The other represents the bad thing. We're going to go back and forth. I'm going to say a positive sentence about that thing. And then you're going to say the negative. But we're essentially weaving together a story together.
Okay.
How's that sound?
It sounds kind of intense for not being very warmed up yet, but we'll try it.
I think this will warm us up. Okay. I think this will be perfect. So let's go with a scenario of, okay, a family goes to Disneyland. Okay, so that's the scenario. I'm going to start with the positive, and then you're always going to twist it into the negative. Okay, here we go. A family goes to Disneyland, and they actually got their tickets for 50% off because it was Memorial Day weekend.
All the rides were closed, and there was a parade for the memorial celebration.
But it's okay because none of the kids enjoy rides anyway, and so they actually just spent a lot of time getting their face painted and eating all the good food that Disneyland has.
It was a rainy day, and all the water washed the face paint off the kids.
But that's okay because as soon as it was washed away, they said, you know what? I actually didn't even like my face paint that much. Let's go do something else. And they came up with the idea to go ice skating. And that was so much more fun.
Except that it was late May, so it was pretty hot and there was no ice.
So they decided to nix that plan. And they actually went to see The Little Mermaid live theater instead, and there were even canopies above their heads so that they didn't get rained on. It was wonderful.
Interesting. So they were outdoors or they were indoors?
They were outdoors, but with a canopy. Thank you.
The tickets were so expensive that they were twice as much as their Disney tickets, so it made it even more expensive than going to Disney for the day.
Should we end it there?
I think that's a good
that one made my palms sweat a little bit.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
That's hard. I think if you're just
Man.
you have to be creative right off the bat.
Yeah. Okay. Do you feel warm?
I kind of want to get into what we're doing here.
Okay. Should we do any High School Musical? Ma. Or you feel good?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I've just done it, so I'm good too.
Okay.
So what we have for today's podcast is a little Q&A session. I went on my Instagram yesterday and I asked all of you guys to send me questions that you wanted to hear us answer. And little plug, if you don't yet follow the Instagram, you can follow It's All Magic Podcast. I think It's All Magic Podcast is one title. That's the Instagram. And I have all the questions listed out on my phone, but Kal doesn't know any of them. So I am going
I think I know too.
Right. So this morning I woke up and I said to Kal very excitedly, oh my gosh, 2 people sent in questions already. And then I read him the questions, not even thinking. But after that, we received some more and he doesn't know them. And I also told him not to think about those questions.
Yeah, I thought about them, but I didn't think about my answers.
Okay, good. And as soon as I told him the questions, and I instantly said, oh, but don't think of your answers, I then tried to change the subject. And I said, what are you doing this morning? And he said, thinking of the answers or thinking of the questions.
That's funny. Did you order them in like easiest to most complicated?
I kind of, yes. I ordered them in a way where it'll just kind of naturally flow some general stuff about our relationship, and then it gets pretty deep.
Okay. And
ready?
before you ask them, actually, I forgot to ask you, how are you feeling right now?
That's a great question, Kalman. I feel pretty good. I'm super excited about having you on. I'm just excited for you to experience all of this. Kal helped with this crazy setup. He usually does, but the setup was double today because we got our lighting, we got 2 microphones, we got 2 computers. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to have you. And I'm excited to share you with the world.
Yeah. Okay. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, great. Now that he's heard that. Okay. First question from our friend.
And this is for both of us to answer, right? Or is this like mainly for me to answer?
Oh no, this is for both of us. This is a dialogue.
Okay.
We're fine. Okay, first question is from our friend Zach. What is something in your relationship that you think everyone needs in theirs? I also have not thought of these.
Yeah,
answers.
that's the one one of the ones you told me this morning.
And you still have no
I
idea.
I actually forgot about that one.
Oh gosh.
I remember the other one because I really liked it, but this one's a hard one because there's so many different aspects and ways you could take this.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that comes to mind is communication and honesty, and just being an open book and communicating your whole thought process. We have gone through many, not really ups and downs, but like many forks in the road where we try to figure out what we want and how we can navigate that together. So for example, back in college, when I was thinking about living in Israel, like I wanted to go to Israel and live there for 2 years or something like that. And at first you were totally on board. And then as time went on, you realized it just wasn't speaking to you. You didn't want that. You wanted to do something else. And so that was probably our really first fork in the road. And that took a couple days of talking back and forth. Devin, the way she processes is, you know exactly what you want and you stick exactly to that. And the way I process is I talk out kind of every different angle and every different mood and try to, in each mood, address what the core of my decision is.
Yeah.
And so communication, although I feel like that's kind of a boring answer. That's a very
that's a
vanilla
good one.
answer.
But also, it's funny that you're talking about how we process. I thought you were going to say that I process verbally and you need time alone to just think, be a nature journal.
I need to reconnect with like what I internally really want.
Yes. And going back to that time, first of all, that time was a doozy. And you mentioned that we had talked about it for days and days, but it honestly took months to really get clarity and then to heal the relationship. Yeah. Because we had been on totally different pages and I essentially gave you the ultimatum of, that sounds rough, but I felt like I needed to, where I said, either you go to Israel, which I fully support if that is right for you. Like I will be your loudest cheerleader, but from the sidelines because it's not right for me. And then if you want to choose this other side with me, then we can do it together. And yeah, that was quite the moment.
Well, I like what you said about healing. I think you said like tears in the relationship.
Yeah.
Because it actually is kind of like, it makes me think of building muscle and working out, where in building the relationship, just like building muscle, there's constantly a tension that can just create certain tears or like little traumatic instances, just, you know, arguments or being angry at each other. And when you have to go through those, and if you make it through that and then you take a little bit of time to just relax and grow back together, then I think your relationship is stronger, just like a muscle.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I would say on top of the communication, well, first to add to the communication, just a small like extra nuance, a cherry on top, and then I'll add something else. I feel like on top of communication about decisions and everything, but we're very honest and vulnerable about how we're feeling. So there are days where Kal will just say, like, I'm not doing well. And we often try to turn it into just like a funny thing anyway. Like, we're unwell, nothing is going okay. So I think we try to add a playfulness, which was actually my second thing. But
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Really?
Just now. Yeah.
I love that.
We're really playful together.
Yes. So I would say we have the vulnerability, we have the communication, but we also play just all day, every day. Like, we have the most ridiculous nicknames for each other. We just like act as different characters throughout the day, weird voices, and keeps us young, you know?
Well, it's also, I feel like we're so comfortable with each other that we feel comfortable expressing our inner child with each other. And I think like when we're playing, it's really just like letting our inner child out. Just like how if you're alone and you're, I don't know, for me, it's like if I'm down by a creek, my inner child comes out and I look for bugs and I like, look for what's living in the water. That's definitely an inner child thing for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like because we're so comfortable with each other,
yes,
that comes out with each other too.
Totally. That reminds me, you with the bugs reminds me of what I told you was one of my highlights from our South Carolina trip a few years ago. So there was a night, I don't know if you had meetings. You might have had meetings late into the night because you were working Pacific time in South Carolina. But anyway, somehow Kal and I were at this beach house with my parents. My parents were busy doing something. Kal was busy doing something. And I had actually just purchased this microphone that I'm holding in my hand now because years ago I had planned to start a podcast and then things happened and it just, didn't happen. But anyway, I was so excited about the microphone and about trying to embody my future podcaster self that I went into one of the rooms and I decided to just sing karaoke. And so I would put on a YouTube video of, the Les Mis song of I Dreamed a Dream just without the words, and I would belt my heart out. And then an hour and a half later you came down from your meetings or whatever you had, and the second you walked into the room, I didn't even change my behavior. I think I was jumping up and down so giddy. And I said, this has been the highlight of my trip. And then I had you watch me as I sang and danced. So I think that's spot on, that we can be our inner children with each other. I love that. Anything else you want to add to that, or you feel good about that question?
I feel good. I'm curious what the next one is.
Okay. Question number 2 was actually from my mom. So she said, what was the first question that you asked Kal when you met? Because I know I said this in my first episode, but as my mom pointed out, I didn't say what your answer to my question was.
Okay.
So we got to do just a quick walkthrough of what was the question, why was it such a foreshadowing of our relationship, and what was your answer?
Well, those of you listening, since Devin already said what she asked when she first met me, I wonder if you can remember that.
Ooh, if you can remember.
Just a little challenge.
If you can remember, pause the podcast now and either write a comment on one of the Instagram posts or on this YouTube video to say what you think it is. And then once you've written your comment, you can tune back in.
Okay. You want to tell me?
Do you not remember?
No, I remember.
Okay.
So we met together for the first time outside of class at the gym at Ohio State in like this little cafe meeting up area. And I think I was already sitting down at the table, and Devin came up and just said, I think you just said, "Hi, what's the meaning of life?"
Yeah. Okay. I probably had a little bit more grace than that, but it was something like, hey, I was just thinking about this on my walk. What do you think the meaning of life is? Or the
I think it was
purpose
more
of life?
abrupt, but
whatever, gosh.
Whatever.
Okay.
We'll agree to disagree.
Let's go with the abrupt.
So my answer, which I think some of you will get the reference, I barely get the reference, is I said 42, which is a reference to a book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I haven't even read it. I just know. Did you know I haven't read it?
No, that's ridiculous. That's so stupid.
I just knew. I had recently taken a class on philosophy where the professor was talking about the number 42 and his theories on why that's this answer. But in the book, they build a supercomputer, and their goal with building the computer is to be able to ask it, what's the meaning of life? And so they build this huge computer. They do all these computations, and then they ask it, what's the meaning of life? The computer prints out 42, and that's all it says. And there's no further elaboration. So it's also intriguing why the author picked 42. I have no idea. My philosophy teacher's theory was that in the Tao Te Ching, his favorite poem was the 42nd. So he thinks that that's where it came from. I don't really think so. I think the 42nd's about the same as the others, but
right. So you don't have any theories about it?
I mean, 42 is a good number. 4 is 2 squared.
Right.
I don't know. I just kind of think it's a random number. It's just a nice number.
I agree.
What about if you have theories on why the meaning of life is 42? Drop a comment below.
Yes, we would love to hear. So you finally know what Kal's answer was. I wish I knew what I said to that. Probably like why.
You're probably like, okay, I guess let's study.
Yeah, but what I really appreciated about you is that you had an answer. You didn't even bat an eye. It wasn't like, oh, what a weird, abrupt question.
But it also kind of reflects our dynamic because whenever you ask me deep questions, I hate when she asks me deep questions.
He hates it.
It like we'll be on a walk and we'll be talking about our day at work, and then she'll ask like, so what in your like deepest desires do you want to be doing if you weren't working? And I would like hate those questions that come out of the blue.
Oh, God.
And so it's totally like I want to have a good answer, but I also like just don't want to take those questions too seriously. So
yeah,
nothing's changed.
It's funny at work. There is this like dichotomy when it comes to icebreaker questions. You'll see how this connects. There's a group of people, like I know one of my managers who's wonderful has the theory that people don't like to answer really deep, thoughtful questions, especially at the beginning of a meeting. And so she'll always opt for questions typically about food. It'll be like, do you like your cookies soft or hard? And everyone has an opinion about cookies. So it's really easy. But I have often taken a different approach of if you ask the really deep, thoughtful, big questions, it opens up people's hearts and lets them share. But I also know that's just because I like questions, and I've learned from you that some people despise them.
A good middle ground icebreaker question would be, do you like deep questions? Because that's kind of like asking, do you like hard cookies or soft cookies? Because I think there's a time and place for deep questions.
Yeah.
I'm open to them. Some people are less open to deep questions than I am.
You're definitely open to them, but
I have to be warmed up.
I was going to say I've learned to read your energy a little bit better.
Yeah.
I know when it's one of those days.
Okay.
Okay. Are we moving on to the next question?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
How many questions did you say there are?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
Cool. Great. Question number 3 is from Hallie Portman.
Nice.
She said, who said I love you first?
Oh,
and
I know
I thought
the
this would
answer,
be interesting. I want to hear your answer. I'm perplexed that you have such an easy answer.
Oh, wait. Now I'm kind of confused.
Okay, that's right.
No, yeah. Well.
Oh, no. You know, it's bad when we get into the no, yes.
We both like told each other we loved each other really early, like before we were even dating.
Yep.
I think you're going to say you were the first.
No,
really?
I think you were.
That's so funny.
Wait,
when
I also
did
thought
me
say
at
it?
First, but I think you like woke up one morning at the beginning of junior year of college and you said you realized you loved me. Like, I think you told me that. So that's what I was kind of counting.
I don't think I said I love you. I remember, I think I
maybe that.
asked you some question about, like, have you ever thought about us dating? Because I was trying to softball that one.
Okay. Well, the obvious answer is when you came to visit me in Cincinnati, and you were in Cincinnati for a wedding, and I'm from Cincinnati, and we met up, and I had this whole plan that I wanted to confess my feelings to Devin, and I was going to take her to this beautiful outdoor area near where I grew up, and it was pouring down rain that day.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of how I asked you to marry me too, but it was pouring down rain, and I was set on it. I was like, regardless of the weather, I want Devin to see this spot, and I want to tell her how I feel. Oh, and so we got bundled up in raincoats, and we walked to the spot because it's like a 20-minute walk, and I was set on walking even though it was pouring.
Oh my gosh.
And also it's kind of an adventure, so it was fun.
Totally. And I was down, which was a good sign.
Yeah. Have you told this in the previous podcast?
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
So we walked there. It was pouring rain, and there's this wall, like knee-high wall, that I stepped up onto, and I had her come up to, and I held her hands and looked into her eyes, and I said, Devin, I love you, and I want to marry you someday. And we're already kind of like on the same page about that, which is kind of weird.
No, this was out of left field.
But no, yeah, this was not like out of the blue. This I've kind of figured we felt the same. And do you remember what you said to that? Because I don't even remember.
I think I said something to the point of like ditto.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like, yes, I feel the same. But it's so funny that you just said you knew we were kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
Why did you know that? What had happened? Oh,
we were just best. So we were really good friends at the beginning of college. We drifted apart, and then senior year or junior year, we just started came back together, and we were just best friends like before. But it also just felt like maybe a little bit more romantic.
Yes.
Like we spent all day,
just more intense,
as much as possible every day together.
Yes.
And then there was that moment in the park. I don't remember if you said this in your first podcast either.
I don't know.
But there was a moment in the park where we were walking around this park in Columbus, and I turned to her out of the blue and said, "Do you think we'll get married someday?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "No, I mean like to each other." And she said, "Yeah, that's what I meant." And so I think because of that, we were pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it's so funny.
I can read the room.
Okay, yeah, he read the room correctly that time. When we were walking to your precious farm spot in Cincinnati, I remember right before we got to that little brick wall that you said you jumped up on, I was asking you a bunch of deep questions. Shocking.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And do you remember what question I asked you and you didn't answer me and I thought you didn't hear me and then you jumped up? Do you know what it was?
It was something that I was about to answer by confessing my love to you.
Yes.
Do you remember what it was?
It was something like who do you love the most right now, or what is one of the people in the world that you love the most?
Yeah, that sounds right.
It was something weird.
Like
I don't know. And he just didn't answer me. And I thought, that's weird. And then he jumps up on the wall, turns to me, grabs both of my hands so we're facing each other.
She also got up on the wall. I wasn't like hunched over.
Yes. So, hunching over, picking me up, and confesses it. And then I remember we had our first kiss as it's pouring down.
Oh, did we kiss?
Well,
we might have.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There had kind of been a previous kiss.
This was like our first real kiss.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But we had that moment, and then I remember sitting in that little almost like a cabin thing.
There's a shelter up there. It's just like a stone base and then a wood roof, and you can see out of two walls. Like there's no walls on two sides, so we could just look over the skyline of the whole area while it was pouring rain. It was a beautiful moment, and I remember sitting there just like, I just confessed the deepest part of myself. I feel so in touch with my emotions, and I just wanted to sit there and just enjoy it. Did you enjoy that, or was it like this guy's weird just sitting here in silence?
No, it was amazing. That was exactly what I needed. Like neither of us had more words.
Yeah.
It was like we had just decided, okay, we'll get married one day. We hadn't even talked about dating yet. We were still friends at this moment. Get that part. And so we're sitting as it's pouring outside of the shelter, and I remember just feeling so giddy. Like I just had this notebook moment where we're kissing in the pouring rain, and he confessed his love, and I confessed my love. And now, like, there's nothing else to do. That's all that.
I just felt like empty in a good way. Like I was just like content, I guess. Yeah.
So that was amazing.
Yeah.
So what was the question? Oh, who said I love you first?
Yeah. By the way, I want to just shout out, this farm is called Gorman Heritage Farm.
Oh,
gosh. It's this farm in the suburbs of Blue Ash. It's not like I lived in farmland.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to use that as a plug to support your local farmers.
I love that. Yes. Welcome to the podcast. My husband, I think I've said this in past podcasts, but he is deeply connected to the earth and the animals. I call him my earthman or my treeman. If I am all things fire and air, he is all things earth and air. Yeah. So we're a great combination.
No water.
Yes, no water. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, from a friend, Sarah. What is your favorite spiritual activity, ritual, etc. that you like to do together? I thought this was an interesting one.
Spiritual activity, ritual, or I guess activity or ritual that we like to do together.
I have a couple ideas.
Yeah, we got to just like list off some of the things because I think there are a lot, but I have to think through some of them to figure out what my favorite is.
Well, I don't know if this counts as a spiritual activity, but I think it's one of our deepest spiritual activities is truly just walking and talking.
Yeah.
Like I think it counts because when you're walking and you're engaged in some sort of movement, it's helping to move the energy through your body, and it helps you open up and be able to, talk more easily and openly. And that has been the basis of our relationship since we were first friends. I mean, when we were just best friends at Ohio State, we would go on the longest walks all around campus, around the river, talking about the deepest things. And so I think that's still,
I think
like, our
some
main
walks are more spiritual than others.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of walks where it'll be after work and we'll basically be speed walking. We're so wound up. And I think that is not a spiritual walk. I think the walks where we are more mindful and slow, and some walks where we actually get into really deep conversations and we talk about manifestation or like what our dreams really are, what we want for our future. I think those are the really spiritual ones. I'd say that might be the number one, but it's also not a super spiritual activity. I think the person wants to hear more of like woo woo.
Okay, then
we have some woo.
I have some other ideas, but you share next.
Well, another one that's, I guess, on the same page, a more practical, like walking, but also still spiritual, is the way we eat. The way we eat, I think, is very tied to spirituality. We both are vegan, whole foods, plant-based, but we eat heavily fresh produce. And I know for me, and I think for Devin too, it comes from a love of nature and seeing like just the magic and healing powers of nature. And there's definitely a spiritual component to the way we eat. And I think that eating what's called high vibrational foods like fruits and vegetables, things even especially uncooked, but even cooking is still good. But I think the way we eat is very spiritual too.
Yes, that's a fantastic answer.
Yeah, but that's also kind of like walking, where it's spiritual and very physical. It's not a purely spiritual thing that we're doing.
Yes, but we even have a book written by Medical Medium. If any of you guys don't know who Medical Medium is, he's a really fascinating guy. His real name is Anthony Williams, and the short story is that when he was, I think, 6 years old, he was sitting at the dinner table with his family, and he heard in his head, "Your grandmother has cancer. Tell her now." And he was 6. He didn't even know what cancer was, but he kept hearing the voice, and so he just said out loud, "Grandma, you have cancer." And of course, his family was beside themselves. "Anthony, what are you saying? You don't say that." And they took the grandma to the hospital, and nevertheless, she had cancer, and they caught it in time to save her. And so that was the very first time that he had this connection with what he calls spirit, and he believes that this spirit gives him all of this healing medical information. And he has written so many books, and he has healed millions of people with his ideas. And I bring that up just because spiritually, when it connects to our food, we have so many of his books. And sometimes before we eat a papaya, we will even open up one of his books to the papaya section to see not only what it heals physically, but what it heals emotionally and energetically. And I think we both believe that food, as you said, is so much more than even just nourishment. It is really a connection to the earth. It is a connection to like our spirits.
Yeah. And like, I think each part of your body almost has its own spirit or soul or intelligence. I think intelligence is probably the best way to say it. And that some foods not only satiate you, but some foods also heal and fuel different parts of your body. So there was a phase that I went through like about a year ago after we got back from our honeymoon, where I was obsessed with eating foods that would be really good for my liver. So basically high hydrating foods and low fat foods. And every meal I would just be like, "Liver, this is for you. You're helping me. I'm helping you."
No, like literally, you guys, we would finally lay in bed at the end of the night, and rather than, turning to his lovely wife and whispering sweet nothings, he would put his hands on his belly and be like,
"No, my liver, right here."
Yeah, okay.
On your left side, at the bottom of your ribs.
Okay, thank you. On your chest belly, whatever that is. And he would just be whispering, "I love you, liver. Thank you, liver. I'm healing you, liver. I love you."
Your liver does a lot for you.
It does. So I think
should do a whole episode on that.
We absolutely should.
Just kidding.
No, not on liver, but maybe on the way we eat or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's a huge part of our journey, even together. I mean, I went vegan, completely plant-based 8 years ago, and you've been vegan for
4.5 years, ever since I moved out to California.
Yeah, but I feel like even when you went vegan, it was very symbolic of just where we were in our relationship, kind of us coming together on even more of the same page.
Yeah, it was like a clean break moving from Ohio to California, starting this new job and this new way of life.
Yeah. Amazing. But to answer more of the question about spiritual activities we do together, I would add a couple. When people think of spiritual activities or rituals, I think these will kind of satiate that.
Yeah.
I would say we journal together, like for example, occasionally, very occasionally. But for example, as I had shared in a previous podcast, for our 1-year wedding anniversary, we went to a coffee shop and we brought our journals and we decided to just answer some prompts that we had actually come up with ourselves earlier that week. We would be on our post-work walks together and just kind of brainstorming questions, and we would write it down in our notes in our phones and then save it for our anniversary. And so that journaling session was extremely fruitful. There's some stuff that we'll be talking about later in this podcast that came out of that
This was
session.
the second question that I knew of. I don't know anything else beyond here. Okay.
Exactly. So I would say journaling. We also sometimes read tarot cards together.
Yeah. We go to yoga classes together.
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot more breath work than me, but I do breath work sometimes, but we don't usually do that together.
Right. We also did the jumping out of your depression together, which is a Kundalini yoga exercise we learned in New York City.
Wait, so the question was, what are some spiritual...
what's your favorite spiritual activity or ritual?
Ritual that we do together. Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers it.
We covered a lot.
Yeah. So just a couple, but I like that question. That was a fun one.
I'll keep thinking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Next from Sabrina. She said, lessons from your first year of marriage. Also, how do you slice apples? Do you know what she's referring to?
Yeah, she's targeting us. Oh my gosh.
We have to quickly explain what that question is.
Let's check that one off first.
So Kal and I had visited our friend Sabrina and her lovely boyfriend Peter in LA back in February of this year. And we had a night where we just, were playing games late into the night, got completely delirious. And at one point I went over to cut an apple because I was just starving. And I cut an apple the way I always cut my apple, which is that you hold it up, you cut 2 cuts on one side, and then I turn it and I do 2 cuts on the next side. So I kind of...
Like inch thick slices.
Not inch, like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. An inch is, like a quarter or a 1/2 inch. And as I'm slicing this, for some reason, Sabrina and Peter especially start cracking up. And they're like, do you even know how to cut an apple? And it just became this ridiculous thing because apparently, what, do they use a core?
No. Well, so Devin cuts it to maximize flat space because she always puts peanut butter or like a date on it.
Yes.
And they cut it, I guess, the normal way, which is like you cut, I don't know how to describe this very well, but you cut a slice around the core, kind of making a square around the core. And then you cut those basically into thirds. So you have you have 4 middle sections and 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
So anyway, that was the targeted question.
What was crazy, she's calling me out too because
why?
I was telling her, I was like, yeah, she's crazy that she cuts her apples like that. I always use an apple slicer. And then they were cracking up and they were like, so you don't know how to cut an apple either. You have to use an apple slicer.
So anyway, that's the targeted question. But the first one is a good one. So lessons from your first year of marriage, ?
Yeah. So I have pretty much one that comes to mind. I'm a very organized person. I love creating systems and putting things in I like spatial relationships. I love, organizing a fridge so that it makes a lot of sense, so that it looks good, but you can also access everything. So functional and form. And so it took me a while to not micromanage Devin because we just moved into an apartment together. We didn't live together before. And then we got married and moved into this apartment together, had a bunch of stuff that we had to figure out how it would fit in one place. And especially the kitchen, because there's so much stuff in the kitchen. And because we're both really into food, we're also constantly moving things around in the kitchen. So I would constantly organize the kitchen and put things in certain places that I thought made sense. And then a couple days later, I'd be like, that doesn't really make sense. And I would move them around. and it would really bother Devin because she would never know where things were.
Yeah.
And I realized that what I have to do is stop micromanaging and see where she naturally puts things. And if I have to put something away and I need to find a place for it, I'll even ask her, where do you think this fits? And I'll see what she says, like, where does she naturally reach towards? We don't always agree, and then I'll have to figure out which one makes more sense. But I feel like there's a metaphor there somewhere. Right now it's specific to organizing, which I don't think everybody would appreciate. But
I think people can resonate with, typically there's one partner that's cleaner than the other, or just have different habits, whether it's hygiene or what their lifestyle looks like, and you kind of have to adapt and learn from one another.
Yeah, definitely a lot of adapting, and also not just organizing, but like daily routines, because we both are morning people and we have a pretty set routine in the morning.
Yeah.
Figuring out our routines there. I think like a life lesson for me is, because I'm so quick to create a system or create a routine or something I've learned during the past 2 years especially is to hold my routines and systems lightly. So I can come up with like a first draft, and then I might not be factoring everything in. And so I'll do that routine, and then I'll be flexible around that. And then slowly from there, something more organic will start to form. And I'll have what I have now, which is a routine. And it changes, like week to week or month to month.
Yeah.
I've just become a more flexible person, I think, living with somebody full time.
That's a good one. I would also add the whole concept of we are a team. What was that thing we learned recently? Like, it's us versus the thing that we're arguing about or trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy, especially in an argument, some sort of conflict where you just disagree. You turn the other person into your enemy. But especially when you're married, but pretty much in any, healthy, stable relationship, you are a team, and it is us against that thing. And I think that's a really helpful point of view.
That reminds me of another one too, is it goes again, I think all of these relate to being codependent. I don't know if that's the right word, but being independent.
That's the negative version.
Being like living with somebody is what I'm trying to say. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah.
But it's not being dependent, but it's also not being independent is what I'm trying to say. It's like I have to make decisions also factoring in not just my head and my heart, but also her heart too. Usually
mainly
our heads
my
are
heart.
Aligned. Yeah.
Mainly my heart.
Yeah. Like, the facts are facts, but it's our emotions that differ.
Yeah. And I think maybe one last thing potentially to round out this answer is the idea that, especially when you've signed up to do the long haul with someone, any trial, tribulation you go through is just that. Like, it's just a bump in the road. And as I said earlier, you are now a team that is going to work to fix that together. It is you guys versus that situation or that trial. And so even when we got back from our honeymoon, you remember we had some weeks where it was rough. I mean, we were moving into a new apartment. My entire family had just moved across the country. So they had sold my childhood home. My parents were gone. My sister was gone.
I was stressed trying to organize everything.
Yes. I was starting a brand new job 3 days after we got back. You were organizing everything. My car, or our car, kept breaking down, and the tires were a mess. I mean, like, everything that could go wrong or stress a person out happened. And I remember it was just a kind of rocky, like, month and a half in the middle of summer. And I remember it was summer because we kept blaming it on being cancer season. We were like, maybe we're just more emotional because it's cancer season.
I think the same thing happened this year too. I think I was kind of cranky during cancer season.
Oh gosh, really? I remember when it passed, I thought, oh, this was so much better than last cancer season.
I don't know.
But anyway, I was going to say, just remembering that you will walk through those times, but you will walk through it together and come out on the other side. Because even now, something we'll get to in the next question, there's potentially a fork in the road that we have been talking about for months and months. And sometimes it has been harder on one of us than the other, not pointing fingers. And so through those times, it's always a question of what is best for both of us individually and as a team.
Yeah.
So I think that's my advice.
And patience. Like, whenever I'm in a bad mood, or we get into an argument or like some disagreement and we're angry at each other, sometimes you can solve it through talking it out. Other times it just takes patience to cool down.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know if I've
What?
told you, I've started this thing,
yeah,
especially on the days where you're a
Okay.
little crankster.
let's hear it.
There are times when you'll say something, let's say you say something just really sassy to me, and I want to react. So I want to say something, I almost form it in my head, and I always ask myself first, is this positive? Will this help the situation, or is this going to make it worse? And the number of times I don't say the thing I want to say. And what's so funny, this happened the other day
Yeah.
where I didn't say something I wanted to say. And later that day, I remember you said, I just wanted to thank you for being so patient with me. Do you remember that?
I don't remember what happened, but I remember I was just like really irritable that day, and and like I just got like upset really, really quickly in the morning, and you didn't react to it, and I was like, that's so nice that she didn't react to it, because if she did, I would have just gotten more and more upset and just like gone down a rabbit hole. And by her kind of just ignoring it, it gives me a second chance.
Yeah, I'm
not usually cranky. It's just that there's just been a lot that she's about to talk about. Just a lot on my mind.
a lot going on.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm glad.
So
I'm glad that's helpful, though.
Definitely. Patience and being flexible are big ones for me.
And asking yourself if what you're about to say will be helpful or hurtful, and always take the higher road when you can. It doesn't always happen, but I try really hard. I think you do too. He's great. I mean, we're talking about his crankster days, but he's not always like that. Okay, shall we end out that question? Okay, final question, and I think this is a big one. So, Aaliyah asked us, what are your plans after corporate life? Travel ? Also, is Kal planning on quitting his job too? Okay, do you want to start, or should I? Here, I'll start with a quick summary of what I've already shared on the podcast. So I've shared that I am quitting my corporate job. I told my managers at this point, like over a month ago, probably 6 weeks ago. And as we're recording, it is currently really early November, and I'm going to work until the end of the year. So I gave them 3 months heads up, but I felt the need to tell them because there were a lot of team changes, and I wanted to give them time. So I'm leaving my job, and I haven't quite mentioned everything we're doing. I've alluded to the fact that obviously this podcast will continue, and we have a couple of other things in the works. But the big question that I'm sure everyone is asking is, so what is Kal doing, and what are you guys doing together?
Yeah, this is hard for being the last question, because this could be its own podcast.
Interesting.
And
do we save it?
Yeah, no, I'll talk, because I'm sure there will always be more to talk about.
Yes.
Give me a week and I'll have new ideas. Right now, Devin's plan is to leave her job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really struggling. So going back to the very beginning of this plan, the idea was that we could both leave our jobs and live off of what we've saved up working corporate jobs for a while, travel to somewhere really cheap like the Philippines or Bali or somewhere in Southeast Asia, somewhere that we would really love to be too. And that way we could just be out there for as long as possible while we figure out what we really want to do next. Because both of us felt in our corporate jobs like we are really fortunate to have these jobs, but we also felt like we could do something more us. And like we wanted to have more of an adventure. Like we could take more of a risk. We have that opportunity and that privilege to take a risk. So we want to travel and have more experiences. I think that's another big thing too, is there's a book called The Defining Decade. And it says a lot about how your 20s are your time to build social capital. And what that means is to go out and have new experiences, to meet a lot of new people, to network, whether it's have adventures in the wild or in nature or hiking and things like that. Or if it's just like in the corporate world, being a consultant, meeting a bunch of new people, trying a different job, meeting a bunch of new people, whatever your path is. And we felt like both of our paths were really straight and narrow. Like I had been at Adobe for over 4 years, and I've just been very content in my job, and I haven't really been interested in exploring outside of that. And I am a very ambitious person, and so I think being very content and not feeling like I want to move in my job is a sign that I'm not going to go anywhere great if I stay on this path.
That's a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
In my I Quit My Job episode, I talked about some of the questions we asked ourselves, things like, when we look around at our current jobs and people in the same environment, the same company, are there people whose careers we envy? And the resounding answer was no.
Yeah.
So we talked about some of those questions, or if I look, at the path down the road, would I want to be in that position? Would I be happy? And so we had gone through those, but I love what you said, that for both of us, we hit a point where we just didn't want to be doing extra. It was like, what is kind of the bare minimum I can do? And that is so not us at all.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for anyone listening out there, if you feel that way, if you feel like you are an excitable, passionate, ambitious person and you have big dreams and big desires, but you're currently in some sort of career situation where you're not reaching or yearning for anything, you might be in the wrong career. And as I've shared, there's a time and a place for us to be safe and have that security and have the stability. But for us, I mean, as we've talked about a million times, we just had so many epiphanies this summer about, we're in our mid-20s. Hopefully in a few years, we could think about, having kids. What are the things that we want to do before then that we would regret forever if we did not? And there were so many things about
because you always wanted to live abroad.
Always.
Like every year you wanted to do that.
Yes.
Every year since high school or whatever.
Literally, yes, that's
You've
absolutely
always had
correct.
that drive.
Exactly.
And I've always had two sides of me. I've always had a side that's very responsible. I'm an older brother, so I'm the oldest brother, so I attribute it to that. I'm a very responsible person. And at the same time, I've also always wanted to live a really bohemian lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to test the boundaries a little bit, see what it's like if you're not in the rat race.
Mm-hmm.
How I really have no idea how people survive if they don't have a corporate job. It's a mystery to me. So that's something I want to experience.
Yeah.
But one last thing I wanted to focus on as like the motivation for this for me is there was a book you were reading a while back, Asking It's Given. It's all about joy and vibrations and making sure you have a high vibration, and that's how you attract things into your life, and that's how you have the energy to follow paths that you love.
Yes.
But one thing that I loved in that book was that your joy is your greatest gift to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I super believe that because I know for me at Adobe, I like what I'm doing sometimes I don't like it, but it's pretty like even keel for me. I could do it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not terrible, but it's also not bringing me joy. And it kind of goes back to what I was just saying, that because it's not bringing me joy, I know I'm not going to have that drive to do the things that people in the same roles that do enjoy that job, they're going to do much better things than I do, because they're going to have that energy. Like my brother, Bennett, also works at Adobe, and he just naturally loves business and SEO and marketing and things like that. And so he'll do great things there or wherever he wants to go. But for me, I want to find a place or a thing that really brings me joy that I can make money from. And I think that will naturally light me up and energize me and push me and fill me with ambition to do something much greater than what I'm doing right now. I just want to find something that I resonate a little bit more with.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That was so well said. And I think a perfect example of, our joy being our greatest gift to the world, and that you can go so much further doing what you love, is even earlier this week. So this is the very end of Halloween week when we're recording. And on Halloween, I read tarot cards for my entire team at work. So this is, full on corporate tech job. And I just naturally have the desire to share these modalities and practices with people. I mean, this is clearly what I love. And so I put this meeting on everyone's calendars, and people were so excited. And then when I actually read cards for everyone, I mean, the things that I kept hearing were, oh my gosh, that was exactly what I needed to hear, or a weight has been lifted from my chest. And it was just such a fulfilling and also exciting and fun time for me because I love it. And I feel that same thing when I'm in some sort of one-on-one and I end up asking the person about their zodiac sign, and I end up doing a full astrological birth chart reading for them. So those moments are like a glimpse into the joy that I could feel and then give back as I serve.
It's a unique strength.
Yes.
For you too.
Yes, exactly. But I'm just saying that those are examples of when I am filled up with that joy and everyone in that Zoom room with me feels it, and it's reflected back to them. So I think it really is our greatest gift.
Yeah. I'm debating in my head whether I should go into more practical things, because I feel bad. I didn't really. Aaliyah, this for you. This was a good overview of where my thoughts and emotions are on this, but it wasn't a very practical overview of like, what are we doing after we leave our jobs?
Well, I can add on just to kind of summarize, maybe add some clarity,
Sure.
At least where we're thinking right now, but granted, this could change. So part of the plan is to travel a little bit, but when we say travel, we mean slow travel, which is essentially the concept of spending, if you can, a couple months in a location so that you really get to know the culture, the food, the religion, the people, and you become like one of the locals. So we want to do some slow travel, maybe in Southeast Asia, like you talked about, because we went to Bali on our honeymoon last summer and loved everything about it. Has all the fruit in the world for us. It's cheap. The people are lovely. So we have certain locations around the world that we want to visit. And on top of that, I will be podcasting. We or potentially me, depending on how you feel, are starting more of a robust YouTube channel. Right now it's just the podcast, but I have wanted to also for years try having, a real YouTube channel. Maybe we're vlogging our travels and we're sharing our healthy habits, like what we eat in a day, all of that. And then on top of that, I know for me, I definitely want to be, hosting workshops, breathwork workshops, meditation, things like that. I would love to host retreats one day around the world. And then for you, I feel like you've recently gotten clarity on some of the things you want to explore.
Yeah, I know a unique strength of mine, just like one of yours. You're just really good with people. Something that I'm really good at is like building processes and organization and like learning and teaching. But I also recently feel like I've connected a lot more with my love of nature, and it's just made me realize that I think I would regret if I never worked with nature somehow. I'm super obsessed with honeybees at the moment.
Obsessed, you guys.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but I don't know if I'm curious to see what I do with that, if I do anything, but I think I've always sacrificed working with nature for being responsible, because those kind of feel I don't know a lot of people who make a lot of money from working with nature, but I'll find a way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The amazing thing about Kal is that he has, I think, so many strengths, and just as your sign Gemini would allude to, you have kind of these two sides. On one hand, as he said, he's really good at process improvement and automation and like system efficiencies and organizing both kitchens and tech. And so he's so good at so many of those things, and data and programming, all of those kind of technical things, that he could thrive using those skills. But I think because you've been using some of those skills even for the last few years, it makes you really miss and crave using your other side, which I think is maybe more deeply connected to your inner child. Maybe not.
Yeah, more inner child maybe, but I don't know. I feel like they're both really valid. Like I'd love to be able to use both.
Yeah. I mean, ideally you could be using some of those skills like at a farm or something.
Somehow, like I could see doing, like in the long run, doing some sort of automation that involves agriculture or bees or like mushrooms, in terms of like reishi and really healthy mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see like doing some sort of thing with that.
Yeah.
But I have to explore, and that's what this time is going to be for us. It's taking a break, it's taking a risk, and not being so responsible, so that we can step away and figure out what the next path is, and like what is really calling to us right now.
Yeah, because I think the worst thing for us to do right now would be to hop from these jobs directly into some other job, and then there's no time or space for us to explore and kind of get regrounded in who we are and what we want.
Yeah, we need a little silence to like listen to what's up next for us.
Yeah, exactly. And one last thing I wanted to share, because I mentioned earlier that this has been kind of a fork in the road that we've been navigating together. The reason why that is the case is because, as you could probably even tell from our answers, I have a little bit more clarity on what I want in this next chapter, which I think is typical in a relationship. Like there were times even for my parents where my dad would know exactly the next move and it would require my family to move, and he got, the promotion or the next job. And then my mom would have to quit her job as a lawyer and would feel lost and would then have to find a new job and kind of figure things out. And so in this chapter, I mean, we've both had these desires to quit and explore and travel and all of that. But, I am pretty clear right now on some of the things that I could start doing tomorrow, whereas you are still in the process of, oh man, I really got to explore. I have no idea.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes me go back and forth so much is we both went from like, we were just going to quit our jobs and just do nothing for a little bit to you realizing you really loved doing this and breath work and you want to pursue this. And like, you're really focused on this now.
Yeah.
And I still don't really know what I need to do. I want to like explore. And so now I'm kind of looking at like exploration versus life insurance. And it's like, is it really worth leaving a job with life insurance and so many benefits just to like explore and figure out what else is out there?
Yeah.
And it's leaping into the unknown, and it's scary, but I think that's what it's meant to be.
Yeah, it's so funny. A few weeks ago, my mom randomly sent us a text and she said, oh my gosh, I just thought of this. What are you and Kal going to do for life insurance when you travel? And Kal and I had different emotional reactions. You instantly went into like, panic. Oh my God. Yeah. Total panic, total stress. And I went into anger at the system.
Yeah.
Like, why is it that when you don't, quote unquote, plug yourself into the matrix, you're dropped? Like there's no assistance for you. I mean, you can probably hear in my voice, it makes me really mad because I believe so strongly in people following their unconventional, unique paths. And I think that our options are often limited because we have to choose that safe option. Whew, okay, I could go on a whole thing.
But also, like, we just don't know enough. We have to learn a lot more about this.
I know.
We have time.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. But like entrepreneurs figure it out.
Yeah,
they
have to,
insurance.
Pay for their life insurance and all
True.
that. So
we'll give you a more detailed and like grounded answer on what we're actually doing once we know a little bit better of what we're actually doing. Right now, it's kind of while we're waiting. And I can also give you more details on like what I'm planning on doing specifically for my job and all of that. But while we're waiting to leave our jobs, we're playing with different ideas. We have some ideas for what we're going to do right after, before we do any long-term international travel. Mm-hmm. But I think that's going to be its own episode.
Yeah, I agree. I just have one question for you.
Yeah.
Am I the life partner you want to navigate these waters with? Okay,
yeah,
good. He passed.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I are just always on the same page. There are lots of times in my life or in like, since I've been dating and married to you, where I feel just super grateful that we are so similar. We're on just such the same page of like the level at which we think outside of the box. We're not extremely thinking outside of the box, but we're also not super conventional.
Yeah.
We're just really on the same page with that.
Yeah, I agree. Same values all the way.
Yeah, and we complement each other.
Totally.
I'm into systems and organization. You're really good with people.
That's why it's funny when we both say, oh, we're so similar. Because I agree. Yeah. I've said that so many times, but we're also very different. Yeah. And I think it's perfect. Like you are into minimalism and I like all things sparkly and colorful.
Right.
And
like
that's just one example.
Yeah. You keep me like
keep
really
you on your toes.
Optimistic, and yeah, like I wouldn't be as interested in joy and high vibrations and just being a positive person if it wasn't for you, and being so social and such a light in other people's lives if it wasn't for you. And you wouldn't be as organized or I mean you're very capable if you don't have me around, but I also help with like filling the tires in the car with gas. This is why I call him my Earthman. I often say I'm not from here. Like I'm a little alien, a sparkly fairy alien from another planet. And so the life things, the filling of the tires and the insurance and taxes, that's the stuff that I know you don't like it either, but
You
But
have
it's kinda
more
satisfying.
patience.
It's
Okay.
kind of satisfying.
It's satisfying. You have more
Yeah.
patience with it.
Yeah.
So-
Anyways, I think that's it. This is
I
might
think
be your longest podcast so far.
Yeah. Well, it was meant to be. I mean,
2 people,
two
twice as long.
voices.
We
Exactly.
should keep going.
Exactly. Any parting words for the people, for the listeners?
Let me know what you thought. If you liked having me on, tell Devin.
Yes.
Um,
And if you didn't like having him on, don't
say
say
anything.
anything.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited. I'm excited to be on here again at some point.
Good. If
Um,
you earn it. No, you will.
Yeah.
Awesome. And reminder, as always, if you could please rate and review the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether it's Spotify, podcast app, you name it, there will be a place for you to rate and review. And if you haven't yet, follow the Instagram at It's All Magic Podcast and our YouTube channel, which is Kal and Dev, or you can just find it through the podcast. Then I recommend doing that as well. And with that, we hope that the people start to believe that life really is all magic after all.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, who sent in questions.
Amazing. Well, we will talk to you guys again soon, sending you all of our love, all of our hugs, and goodbye for now. Bye.
Bye.